some of you last night, well, let me touch on one other point, core values. You will learn things, you're building upon the blocks that you grew up with in terms of core values. You will learn things in life that punctuate those points or maybe detour from those points or maybe add to those points. So for example, at Florida State, I learned several very important lessons on ethics. And it's carried me throughout my entire career in life. And I think that while you don't always look for those opportunities, when they happen, they present an aha moment to you. So for example, one of those things was having written an article that was in press, and that article, unbeknownst to the person who used it, was handed to them, and they gave it as a speech at a national convention. Unbeknownst to them, in the audience were the people who had approved it and knew it was in press. So there's that kind of thing that you have to be careful in your work, that you don't pass things on as yours for someone else to misuse unknowingly and end up being quite embarrassed over it. Another thing, too, that happened in the Counselor Ed program when I was here, because I took courses, my major was Counselor Ed, but I took college student personnel. Mel Hardy being here was the legacy of the world of college student personnel at that time, and she was a major draw to this university for students, and of course higher ed administration as well. So I had the three as a major emphasis when I was here. But when I was sitting for my doctoral exams, we were in a room, there were probably, I forget, maybe 10 students in the room, and the guy sitting next to me was cheating. And it was so disturbing to me that I left the room. I went and saw my major professor, Nick Gimstead, wonderful, wonderful person, and said, I'm very troubled by this, but this is what's going on. And felt totally relieved that I told him that I could release it and go back and finish my exam. I have no idea what happened to the student who was cheating, but it was clear that that was a turning point. Do you ignore that? Do you turn a blind eye to it in other ways, or do you report it? And one of the things we've learned that Seth could talk with you ad nauseum about from the University of Virginia recent lessons is that because of the honor code at UVA, that has led the ability of the faculty, the alumni, and the students to respond appropriately to the behaviors that went on there at the board level. So the honor code, the ethics, the sense of who you are, your core values are really important. That later in life for me led to, in my first presidency, putting together an honors and ethics weekend where we brought faculty, students, staff, and board members together to focus on honor worldwide. And we started with case studies. We went from macro to micro. So the macro was Chernobyl. Some of you are too young to remember what Chernobyl was. It was basically a nuclear disaster. And so that was one case study, and we worked through the weekend down to the micro, which is I'm a student in the residence hall. I have a roommate. She's just had her boyfriend move in with her. What do I do? So there's the two female students and the male boyfriend. So that kind of thing then led to that university starting an honor code and an ethics code and an emphasis. But that originated with the incidents at FSU that I then took with me throughout life. And it also has come into play in many ways when a board member one time asked me to rig a bid so that he would get a $15 million contract. And rather than respond, I simply took out a pen and paper and I wrote out my resignation and handed it to him. I didn't say a word to him. And he said, he tore it up, he said, we'll forget this conversation ever existed. So building the stamina to deal with the realities of life, it's very important, and this university contributed that to my background. It built upon the core values I already had.